You know what I was thinking about this morning? I was thinking about the comic strip Dilbert. Uh, I just, Dilbert by Scott Adams. It was a big comic strip in the 1990s when I was growing up. It was very minimalist about a bespectacled, he wore glasses, office worker named Dilbert. And a lot of the jokes just revolved around menial office tasks. And I think he had a dog named Dogbert. And there was a boss with the big pointy black hair on either side of his bald head, right? I haven't thought about Dilbert in years. Here's an example of a Dilbert comic. Dilbert here is talking to Dogbert, who's standing on the desk so that he can look at his owner at eye level. And the cartoon is titled Dogbert Crisis Consultant. Dilbert says, "I'm being canceled for something racist I said on YouTube." Dogbert says, "What did you learn from this experience?" Dilbert says, "Maybe I should stick to Twitter." Dogbert in the last panel says, "So nothing then." Wait a second. This is not from the 90s. Dilbert's talking about YouTube. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, the context is important. I just clicked on it. It says the headline on Google here is the dropping of Dilbert following cartoonist Scott Adams ... Oh gosh. Racist comments. Is that what? Yep. That's exactly right. I just clicked on the article and it loaded. It said the dropping of Dilbert following cartoonist Scott Adams race remarks, not racist remarks. Okay. I knew something had happened to Scott Adams, like he had gotten himself into some hot water or whatever. But, yeah, apparently, Scott Adams made some racist remarks, and now I guess Dilbert is gone. I mean, not that I've even paid attention to the Dilbert universe since I was in high school. Maybe my last Dilbert comic I read was when I was a junior in high school. I don't know. Why was I thinking about Dilbert? I don't know. It's just, I had this thought this morning when comic strips in the newspapers used to kind of be pop culture phenomenons, right? And Dilbert in the 90s was undeniably one of them. I think it may very well have been the last of the great comic strip phenomenons. I can't think of any comic strip that ran in the newspaper after Dilbert that, because obviously newspapers got phased out. I used to deliver newspapers, and 3 weeks after I quit my paper route in 2012, the Birmingham News went down to 3 days a week, and now they don't, print newspapers at all. So, and I know web comics made a dramatic rise. Remember that web comic Penny Arcade? That was certainly something that a lot of people read back in the day. That was like a big, online comic that targeted, I guess, millennials and Gen Xers. A lot of it was like about video games or whatever. But yeah, Dilbert may have been the last big phenomenon in newspapers. And the 1990s was a really big time for the funnies, I guess. Your granddad would always call them the funnies, the funny papers. My grandfather always used to have this phrase. He said, "See you in the funny papers." I don't know what that was, but it was. I read the funny papers a lot. I think they were a way of getting kids into the idea of reading newspapers, but also I think just to entertain adults, just to give them a reason to subscribe to the newspaper. It was an early version of what we now call infotainment. I suppose, were the funny papers. But I don't know about you, but I can speak for myself. When I was a kid, it was a big deal to get the funny pages because your dad would read the newspaper at night. He would come home from work and all grouchy, and he would sit down in his recliner. And my dad, for instance, before episodes of like Quantum Leap or LA Law or something, he would sit there in his recliner and he would read the newspaper, catch up on the news of the day. And I, as a little kid, wanted to, I guess, emulate him to some degree. So he would always give me the funny papers. I know that I sound like such an old person saying funny papers. How else would I say it? The comic strips, the funny pages. I don't know. And he would give me the funny pages, and I would sit there on the couch across from him, and he would read his news and sports and editorials, and I guess I would sit there and I would read the comics, and it was a pretty consistent thing that I did throughout childhood until I suppose I was maybe in high school. And I would sit there and I would not read all of the comic strips because some of them just, like, frankly were terrible. They sucked. I have a friend who tells me that the Family Circus was not that bad, but it never made me laugh. Jeffy and all that. But, you would always start there. They would have the single panel comic strips like the Family Circus, but also, obviously, in the 90s, the Far Side was a big one. Dennis the Menace was usually there. You would usually skip Dennis the Menace. What was the other one? The big single panel comic strip. I'm blanking all of a sudden, but yeah, then you would start, and a lot of people like to read all of them, but I skipped through, and usually I would start with the Peanuts, even though they were never funny. I liked the Peanuts, and that was probably the multi-generational comic phenomenon was the Peanuts. Your parents read them, and now I'm reading them, and yeah, you would see, obviously, the Christmas special always on, and I guess you could define a comic strip phenomenon by the fact that the comic strip, the funny pages, was just its home base, and outside of that, they would have television specials, and they would have maybe some movies, for instance, and yeah, there would be merchandising also. You would have, like, the Peanuts, for instance, would be on, like, pencils and stationery and and T-shirts. And so, yeah, the Peanuts was a stalwart, even though I never found them funny. It was like, oh, the Peanuts. It was something familiar to me. And then, of course, when I was in elementary school and Calvin and Hobbes became really big, Calvin and Hobbes was a great pop culture phenomenon. I would go to the bookstore and get the books. They would have the Calvin and Hobbes treasuries and then collections, and bring those books to school, and you would just pass those books around. Everybody wanted to read Calvin and Hobbes, about a little kid with an overactive imagination and his stuffed tiger. And Calvin and Hobbes was very difficult to understand. It was a very philosophical comic strip. It was very existential, about this kid just living in his own world and trying to deal with a very mundane world, and kind of coming to grips with how nobody wanted to indulge his imagination. And that was the comic strip artist Bill Watterson's way of telling us that's what people with imaginations, that's what the world is going to be like. You're going to have these great things you want to do, and just everybody around you is constantly cynical and doubtful about it. But you got to be like Calvin. You got to keep going, right? I didn't understand that. I just liked the little stuffed tiger. And Bill Watterson was most likely the best artist drawing comic strips, right? I mean, I don't think there was any doubt about it. Of course, Monday through Saturday, you would get black and white Calvin and Hobbes, and then on Sunday, you would get the full color spread. And some of those were just so undeniably beautiful, especially if Bill Watterson did, like, Spaceman Spiff or something like that. These great out-of-this-world drawings. But But Calvin and Hobbes was a big deal. And yeah, you would get other fun comics. Again, Garfield was one of those comic strips that wasn't really funny, but I guess it could be funny. I don't know. But Garfield was a phenomenon. He had his own television show every Saturday morning that we would watch. And of course, I think they just came out with a new Garfield movie. So Garfield has lived on long, long, long past his initial relevancy, which is just so interesting to me that kids are still interested in Garfield. But yeah, Wizard of Id, and then you would get these like comic strips that have been there since time immemorial. You had like Mary Worth and the Phantom, and these like soap opera comic strips or these adventure comic strips where the point was not to make you laugh, it was just to tell a story, and those were becoming so phased out. But I still remember they made a Phantom movie. It was like with Billy Zane in the mid-90s, right? But yeah, Dilbert was one of those late additions, though. Dilbert came in around, maybe 1989 or 1990, and was a mainstay in the comics, and like I said, became a huge phenomenon where the comic strips by the end of the 90s were like the home base. The Funny Pages was like the home base for Dilbert. But outside of that, you had merchandise, you had... I remember I even had a doll, like a Dilbert doll, that I hung from the drive-through, from the rear view mirror of my first car for some reason. I wasn't working or anything, but here's the thing why I was thinking about Dilbert. Why was I drawn to Dilbert? I don't know. When I was in middle school, I had nothing to relate to with Dilbert. Like Calvin and Hobbes, the Peanuts, Garfield made sense, but Dilbert, for whatever reason... And I was really trying to examine this idea of like why I read every single Dilbert. I read Dilbert every night. And there was a cartoon that came on UPN, that defunct television network. It was like Channel 2. And it was weird that Dilbert was on UPN because UPN was associated with, African-American entertainment, right? Like I think they had Martin... Maybe Martin was on Fox or whatever, but yeah, they had like Moesha, right, with Brandy, and it was I watched UPN, but most of it was African American, directed entertainment, and then they had Dilbert, this cartoon, about this white, spectacled office worker, and just dealing with, office. It was really Dilbert really did fit into this, I guess, late 90s milieu or zeitgeist of just making fun of the office, of dry satires. And this is years before that Steve Carell show The Office comes on. So, there was in like the late 90s Office Space, obviously. Fred Savage of the Wonder Years grew up, and then he was in the show Working for a couple of seasons on NBC that was very much Dilbert inspired. And he would just get into all these absurd situations in the office where, and this is very much like Dilbert too. I remember that Fred Savage show Working. Why did I watch this? I had nothing. I guess Fred Savage was on it and I liked the Wonder Years, but I still watched this show Working that I don't know if anybody remembers the show. But yeah, Fred Savage worked in this cubicle at this big. It's always the theme of these shows and of the Dilbert comic strip that the company is very anonymous. It's not very clear what they do, what they produce, but they operate in like this draconian, authoritarian Soviet ecosphere, where all the workers are just anonymous and they're constantly having to follow these absurd rules handed down from an unseen corporate overlords, right? And like later on in the late 2000s, you got like the IT crowd, for instance, poked fun at this a lot over there in Britain. But I had no way of caring about this in the 90s, I think, other than the fact that it was ubiquitous. So I don't know if you were also into Dilbert, if you also were aware of satires of American office corporate culture back then, but I don't know. And I think the only thing I can figure out why I was interested in Dilbert in the 1990s, when I was in middle school, especially, and a little bit of high school, was that I just so desperately wanted to, I guess, grow up and get this job. And because high school and middle school were so boring and so fraught with peril, and every day was just a struggle to get through it. A lot of people look back on their secondary school days very fondly. I have a lot of irritation toward them. They were not really fun times. I think it's just they were boring times also. Just every day you get up and you put on your clothes, you get on the school bus and you go to school, and it's just 7 periods of just learning stuff that you don't really want to learn or care about much or anything like that. And at the end of the day, you just come home and you feel like you don't really have much to show for it. And then I guess I read the Dilbert comic strips, and I was like, someday it's going to be like that. I was like, someday I'm going to go to this office and wacky things are going to happen, like they happened to Dilbert. I guess that's what it was. Maybe it was just escapism, and all this. And yeah, I had the idea that my dad was really interested in Dilbert because my dad worked in an office. He was like he was a manager for a bank. And I had this idea that he would just get a kick out of Dilbert, and he kind of every once in a while seemed to chuckle whenever I would read him like a Dilbert, comic strip. And I remember for Christmas one year I got him like this Dilbert, this desk piece that you could put on your desk at work of Dilbert working at a computer or whatever. So I don't know if he ever took that to work with him, but yeah, it I guess I now realize, looking back at it as an adult, was that Dilbert was a comic strip that was kind of designed to make fun of the kind of people that my dad was. Just these worker bee office drones. I don't know. I got like this. I still have a Dilbert comic strip, one of those books called Shave the Whales. A Dilbert book by Scott Adams. Shave the Whales. And like Dilbert's on it. He's like sitting on top of a whale. And Dogbert is in the raft on the water below him, humming a tune and shaving the whale. Yeah. I'm willing to bet that Scott Adams still does Dilbert. He just does it for his own website, and he writes about getting canceled and things like that. Like I read at the beginning of this show. Yeah, I'm flipping. Here's on page 17 of Shave the Whales. This book came out in the mid-90s. I think I got it for Christmas, maybe when I was like in the 8th grade or whatever. And yeah, there's Dogbert. Dogbert's sitting there thinking. He's like on a pillow or whatever. And Dogbert says, all mammals have hair. Whales are mammals. Therefore, whales have hair. Shave the whales. It's an example of Dilbert humor there. That's funny. I randomly opened up to a page here and I Shave the Whales, and I found the comic strip that the book is named after. All right, here's another one where Dilbert looks like he's at the police station, I guess, and Dilbert's reporting a crime. I was mugged, but I got a good look at him. And the police officer says, I'll get a police artist. And next panel, Dilbert's sitting next to a sketch artist, and Dilbert says, a big head and kind of a frightened expression. In the last panel, perfect. Oh, the sketch artist is showing him what he sketched. Dilbert says, perfect. Looks just like me. Now let's do the mugger. He was sort of off to the left here. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Is Dilbert funny? I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. I always knew that Scott Adams was a bit of a, I don't know what we might call one of those guys who is better. He's better off just drawing, and he should probably not talk that much. I've heard, yeah, just like he made some racist comments. I think that's kind of goes throughout his career. You know, is that he's kind of a racist a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, he's not like Bill Watterson. Bill Watterson has given like maybe 2 interviews. He really is like the J.D. Salinger, like the Thomas Pynchon of cartoonists. Just a guy who lets his work speak for himself, you know, Calvin and Hobbes, and doesn't really talk that much about anything else. But anyway. But yeah, this is this is Mike Booty. This is the Midnight Citizen Show. Welcome in. And let's see what it's doing outside right now. And I was thinking about going outside and sitting down and maybe having a cigar. But it was kind of supposed to storm earlier, and it still looks pretty pre-storm. But I don't know. You never know, like summer days here in Alabama. It always feels like it's about to storm in the afternoon, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Last night it did not. But I don't know. So, yeah, I was. This is odd. It's a Sunday afternoon here, and normally I record at night, and I release my show on Saturday. And so if you went on to my Substack last night, and or you know, you get my show delivered to your. I'm gonna have a beer here. You get my show delivered to your inbox, or you get it automatically downloaded on Spotify or whatever. Last night I wasn't able to record a new show, so what I did is I just dove into the archive. You know, I've been doing this show since 2010, so I have a pretty extensive archive of shows that I know that I can just release whenever I can just release a flashback episode, or as I call it, like an encore. Whenever, like you're standing up and applauding me so much that you want an encore, right? And I was very reluctant to do that because I know it looks lazy, but I don't know. I tried to record several times this week, and every time I did, I just got interrupted. I just didn't have time to do it. It's just been, you know, and I've been cleaning out the Midnight Citizen studio, so I didn't want to go in and do like a show in the middle of like a very messy studio. So, but yeah, I felt bad about releasing the episode last night that was from April of 2017, but I hope you enjoyed it if you did listen to it. You know, and enjoyed it a lot, but I did feel bad about it. So I think, like, you know, it's a Sunday, so I just decided I'm hanging out at the house, take a break from what I'm doing. I'm kind of cleaning out my computer, consolidating files, because it's gotten a little bit difficult to edit on that machine lately. Edit video and audio and all that. And so I've been working on it to kind of make it a little bit faster, as fast as I can get it. So I've been doing that all day. And I think I'm just going to take a break and yeah, talk about the show. I'm going to go outside and maybe have a cigar. Hopefully beat this storm, right? Let's see. Yeah. Scott Adams is I guess writing about being canceled now, and it just, you know, it's just what we do. Is like kind of politics. Is it just me, or just like, does politics preclude everything that we do now? It does. It's just okay. So sitting outside here a few minutes later, and feels very nice right now. You hear like birds singing in the trees, and a breeze, and that's why summers in Alabama, I know that they are at their worst, super humid and wet hot, but the last week or so, I don't know if it's because of this hurricane that happened in the Gulf. We've had a lot of rain, but it's that rain has been cooling things down significantly. And last night it just was breezy. It felt almost just a little bit like being at the beach. There wasn't any salt air, but right now it's really feels kind of nice. It's good weather to silently process everything that's been going on in the world in the past week, especially. So I just found out about an hour ago that something that I honestly didn't expect was going to happen. But maybe it was a foregone conclusion. Joe Biden, the president of the United States, just dropped out of the 2024 presidential bid. And I really felt like he was going to hold on to that. I know that he's been he's had just such a series of bad moves lately, just with appearing to be everything that Joe Biden or that Donald Trump said he was during the debate. You know, like sleepy and feeble. And just with the press conference and that he did right after that. And then, of course, he got COVID earlier this week. And I just thought this guy must just be super stubborn like any other old person that I know. Just super stubborn. And I was thinking that if the Democrats lose in November, if they lose the presidential race, I'm going to feel bad for Joe Biden because everybody's going to come looking for him. Everybody's going to blame it on him. And I really did want Joe Biden to just get out of there, to just run the country for the next 5 months and not have to drop everything every 5 seconds and go campaign and go raise money. And I've been saying for several weeks now that just the shot in the arm that the Democrats need is to get somebody young and exciting in there, right? And actually make this thing an automobile race, because if it wasn't clear, but before the assassination attempt on Donald Trump last week, I think Donald Trump is most assuredly seized the everybody knew he was going to be the nominee. I think even after that disastrous speech he gave the other night that apparently went on almost as long as most Marvel movies, he just it's amazing he has that much love, because apparently if that speech was I did not watch all of it. I saw highlights, but because I can't really stand to just hear that guy talk for very long at all. It's like, I don't know. It's like somebody just takes the claw end of a hammer and just scrapes it down a chalkboard along with their nails, right? It's just that's Donald Trump for me. But yeah, I think Donald Trump is definitely going to. I think everybody knows that he's going to win in November, but I think now with Joe Biden dropping out, it looks like he at least has a fighting chance, or the Democrats have a fighting chance. I think, I was watching the morning talk shows this morning. I was watching here you can only watch about 30 minutes or so of like any morning talk show, like Face the Nation or Meet the Press, before it goes to like a church broadcast. Like there's a church down the street in Homewood that every Sunday pays the CBS affiliate here in Birmingham to preempt Face the Nation. So you get to watch 30 minutes of Face the Nation, and then we have to go to like Pluto TV to watch the rest or whatever. But yeah, it just seemed like there was a unified attack on. I wouldn't say attack. I would say a unified call by Democratic pundits and congressmen and senators on the news shows this morning to just get out of the race. Like I was watching Joe Manchin, the independent senator from West Virginia, and that was his whole thing. He was like, he had written an open letter to President Biden and published it in like the Wall Street Journal, I think, and all calling on him to step down and thank you for your service, but we'll take it from here. And there were all these other senators and Congress people who had signed a petition to get him to step down, and I think that was just the straw that broke Biden's back. I think it honestly was. I think he was on the fence about it all week long while he had COVID, and he missed just a very crucial week of campaigning and fundraising while the Republican National Convention was going on. And I think this morning he probably woke up, and like all of us did, he watched the Sunday morning news shows and just saw this unified front of people in his party asking him to step down, like thanking him, but just say, please, just stop it. It's like after the assassination attempt and people go into the Republican National Convention wearing like solidarity bandages on their ears. We need somebody in there who can put all of their attention into campaigning and beating this guy in November. Whereas, Joe Biden, is still the president. He has things that he's got to do. And the thing about just a campaign year, if you're the incumbent, is that you not only have to fight what are very often very difficult uphill battles in going back to the White House, but you also have to be in the White House governing. And it just seems like Biden, no matter what those insiders closest to him say, and those people who support him being in the race say that, oh, he's more energetic than ever. It's just, no. He does not come across to the American people as energetic. I'm sorry. And so I am very, very relieved that he stepped down today. And I don't know who will take his place. There seems to be a lot of talk of, I know this guy Dean Phillips, who's a Democratic senator from oh God, where is he from? Kentucky, maybe? I don't know. From one of those middle states, I think. I think he was challenging Joe Biden for a while. He was one of the guys who stepped up to the plate and said, "I'll take it from here." But then he just didn't have the supporters. Maybe now he will. Gavin Newsom, maybe. And then of course there's Kamala Harris, right? She's still the vice president, right? I don't know. I've seen her in public less than I've seen like the Surgeon General of the United States in public. We still have a Surgeon General. I had no idea. The Surgeon General recently made news because he wants to put like warning labels on social media platforms. The same way that they have on like packs of cigarettes and things. And yeah, like, where was the Surgeon General during all of COVID? I remember Anthony Fauci, but Anthony Fauci was not the Surgeon General. I think the most famous Surgeon General there was C. Everett Koop, remember? And then there was that one that we had who told everybody it's okay to masturbate. I remember that. But other than that, like, anyway, yeah, my point is that I don't know where Kamala Harris has been, but I don't know if she is she's the best choice at this point. It seems to be that people universally kind of don't like her that much. So So, yeah, it just was a lot to process this week. I just last Saturday I was sitting on the back porch of my parents' house. I was still house sitting for them, and I was really close to finishing this book that I was reading called The Paperboy. This book by Pete Dexter, called The Paperboy, and I was really into it. And I was like, oh, 30 pages left. I can just go ahead and finish this book. And I turned off my phone. I put it on Do Not Disturb, except for like my, emergency people. Like if my parents needed to contact me because they were coming home, or my wife needed to contact me. But yeah, I turned off my phone so I wouldn't be distracted. And I was just sitting down reading this book. And finished the book. And then I turned my phone back on, and just like the world had just gone crazy. It was like on top of 3 of the most 90s celebrities that there ever were dying. Dr. Ruth Westheimer, Richard Simmons, and Shannon Doherty. Somebody took a shot at President Trump. I don't want to talk about this, but it just was like, listen, an awful thing. Okay. I don't want, anybody to, the world is so much a better place when we don't live with the daily threat of political assassination. Right. That was so boomer. Okay. Obviously, we had JFK was assassinated, and then somebody took like 3. There were 3 separate assassination attempts on Gerald Ford. Is that right? But they kept missing because he kept falling down the stairs of Air Force One or something. And then, yeah, of course, somebody took a shot at Reagan, but that didn't seem to have anything to do with politics. That was because the guy wanted to impress Jodie Foster, I think. And yeah, things have been relatively peaceful for, what is that, like 42 years now, I guess? And yeah, it looks like kind of the same thing was going on with this guy who shot Trump the other day. And I will say it proved me wrong. I thought that kids weren't really into politics. I don't know, but maybe he wasn't. It's this 20-year-old kid from a nearby town, and what they seem to be saying is that he was just looking for some place to hold a mass shooting. He wasn't exactly targeting Donald Trump specifically. He was just looking for a good venue for a mass shooting, and just happened to see this campaign rally for Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. I don't know. It does seem to just be like a catastrophic disaster, or I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's just a sign of our times that I turned on the television. I turned on CBS News to just see coverage, and the first thing I see is Margaret Brennan was telling everybody, like, don't believe any conspiracy theories on social media. Just stick right here. And so draw your own conspiracy theories from what we tell you, I guess. But I mean, just a sign of the times that they're automatically talking conspiracy theories. And but I can't blame people, because it just looks like just this catastrophic failure on the part of the Secret Service to protect Trump. I mean, they were not there on the stage with him. There's a lot of video. I mean, I know that there's at least one video of people waving down security as they're filming this guy climbing up onto this roof with a sniper rifle and a rangefinder. And there was apparently not a Secret Service agent, but a cop who climbed up on the roof and then immediately fell down once this kid pointed the rifle at him. Right. And yeah, it just seems it seems terrible. And there was yeah, I know, like, Republicans calling for the resignation of the head of the Secret Service. I don't know if that's really who's responsible. It's just like she wasn't there that day. This woman who runs the Secret Service. It was the agents who were there, the agents in charge, who just seemed to be not providing any security for Donald Trump at all. And so I don't know if it was this thing where, like, the Secret Service are not, they're like, they're like baseball umpires or referees in football or something, right? They're supposed to be apolitical when they're on the job. Right? Their package is their package. They're supposed to protect him or her or whoever. And it just seems like Donald Trump was kind of standing there with no protection around him. He was, nicked in the ear, and then they all swarmed around him. And maybe the Secret Service, they were just, maybe subconsciously or even consciously, were just not really. They're like, I can't believe, like, I'm missing my kid's Little League game. I come here to protect this asshole. God. And yeah, and I could see why, because, like, the Secret Service, when they swarmed Donald Trump, their first priority, right, is to get him to safety. But he tells them to wait. Donald Trump tells these guys who are surrounding Trump, before they even know that the shooter is down, he's telling them to wait and let him stay on stage. And they're protecting him, and he, of course, puts his right hand above them. And, of course, they're protecting him, so the other agent on his right shoulder raises his arm as well, while Donald Trump makes like a black power fist and says, "Fight, fight." And I'm watching this being like, you know what? If my job was to put my life in jeopardy for this asshole, I might be a little bit slow to move to him. I don't know. But at the same time, again, I know, like, I don't want to. I'm glad Donald Trump survived this. I don't like the idea that of political assassinations becoming a thing again. Violence should not be a thing, right? And it does seem like this kid was not political, and so there was. I was scrolling down my Substack today, and somebody, or the other day, and somebody made the comment that this is the straw that broke my back. I'm voting for Trump in 2024, and it's like, okay, don't let why are you letting this guy have all this power? Why are you letting this kid speak for all Democrats? And people see that, they see what they want to see. When somebody takes a shot at Donald Trump, they figure that the guy was automatically a Democrat. Well, no, he's not. He's just a wacko, and he's speaking for himself. Even if he is a registered Democrat and he's all Biden all the time, he doesn't speak for me, right? Like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in November. I know that I'm not going to be voting for Donald Trump, but that doesn't mean that my vote or my political opinion speaks for anybody else around me, right? This is a country of individuals, okay, who are all agreeing on one single contract, that we let the political process go about its way, and we don't do anything to interfere with that, okay? So... and that includes political assassination. So, I am glad Trump is okay, and we all knew what was going to happen ahead of the convention, is that he was going to go there and he was going to milk it for all it's worth. And I'm not downplaying at all getting nicked in the ear, but it is very much like that thing when the injury was akin to just cutting yourself shaving. What do you do when you cut yourself shaving? You take a little bit of toilet paper and you kind of dab it and you let the blood act as an adhesive. And by the end of the day, it's gone. It's patched up, right? And Trump still had that thing on his ear, like 5 days later. Okay. It was, it was like watching a little kid fall down on the playground and skin their knees, and they're still whining about it 3 hours later. That's what it was like. But anyway, I am glad Donald Trump is okay, right? But I don't know. There is this thing that, when something like that happens, something national, on a national scale that every American sees and all that, it is at some degree traumatic, right? It's something like you experience it, and you have, in the sense that it's traumatic in the sense that you have to process it. And I guarantee you that every person who hates Trump and is afraid of him being president, and maybe even some who love Trump and want him to be president, everybody probably just like looked up for about a split second at least and said, "Oh, really?" And kind of thought the worst thing possible, that like, oh my God, thank God he's gone, right? And now we can just go back to boring business as usual. It's like, I think you would have to assume that, right? And then after that fifth of a second had passed, they go back to being like, oh no, wait, we live in a democracy. We live in a place that has a peaceful transfer of power. We do not like violence. We don't want it. We don't condone it. Okay, fine. And all that. But some people, process, like all people process trauma differently. Okay. And I think like to make like a bad joke where it's like, well, don't miss next time. I think should not be automatically counted as hate speech or violent speech or speech condoning violence. I don't know. I'm thinking, of course, about what happened with the rock group this week, Tenacious D. And I have been thinking about this quite a bit. If you don't know, Tenacious D is this like satirical rock group, and the two founding members of it are Kyle Gass, who is he's been an actor in a few things, like he was notably in the movie Elf, and all that, and he's just kind of a character actor. But the other person of the band is really big, is this guy Jack Black, right? These guys have been performing together for 40 years. They started out in improv theater and really took off around like 2001 or so, when Jack Black started to become like a world-renowned, like recognized comic actor, and was famously like in like School of Rock, and what are some of his other movies? Yeah, he's just been in a lot of stuff, and he's one of those actors that can sort of seamlessly transition between doing adult-oriented comedy. Like Tenacious D is very filthy. A lot of their songs revolve around, dirty stuff, sex and all that, and have a lot of bad language in them. And then he can go and do family films at the same time, like School of Rock and like Jumanji. He's in those movies, right? And so they were apparently playing a concert in Australia this week, like on Saturday night, I think, right after the assassination had been attempted on Donald Trump. And it was Kyle Gass's birthday, and Jack Black surprises him with a birthday cake and tells him to make a wish. And Kyle Gass just like, reflexively says like, don't miss next time. And nothing really seemed, from what I could read in the newspaper and understand in the newspaper on the internet, was that they went on and played their concert. Nobody said anything about it. And I think like things immediately blew up, and before you knew it, the band was broken up. And Jack Black put out a statement that said like, I don't condone violence of any kind. And Kyle Gass said like, I don't condone violence of any kind, and by the way, my agent dropped me and everything. So it was one of these things where it's like, we've seen this so many times before where somebody immediately gets canceled for something that they say. And now it's like this guy's career just is in the toilet. He's like a pariah. And like, this story really shook me. I think number one, because it just looks like Jack Black, who is a multi-millionaire and also multi-millionaire guy who has his hand in a lot of different entertainment pies. He through Kyle Gass, who isn't really nearly anywhere nearly as known as he is, and kind of his career can't really survive without the help of Jack Black and this band that they're in together. I think Jack Black just threw him under the bus. And I just keep thinking about the fact that just this statement that Kyle Gass made was him processing a very traumatic event and making a bad joke in the moment. And what people like Jack Black, like these celebrities that have their reputations, to protect, their careers to protect, the idea of the public just allowing Jack Black, to give his friend and collaborator of 40 years a little bit of grace and simply putting out a statement that says, I don't condone violence of any kind. My best buddy of 40 years, who I know and love, made a mistake. It was a bad joke. I forgive him for it, and we'll continue with our band. And if you want to come see the band, that's okay. Or if you don't want to come see the band, that's all right. If you think that we're two people, if you think that my buddy Kyle is a violent person who wants the President of the United States to die, right? I just think that's the thing. I just think like, I've been thinking about this like term lately, like when you're on a plane and there's that initial thing where you're speeding down the tarmac, you're gaining speed, and then suddenly you're in the air, right? And the whole thing plays out in the reverse, right? At the end of the plane ride. And in the middle of the plane ride, there's that moment, right, where the seatbelt light comes off and you're free to roam about the cabin because you're at cruising altitude, right? Cruising altitude is what I think like we just need to, I want us to be at. I want us to be at this thing like where we're just kind of flying softly through the skies and we're free to roam about the cabin and everything that we do isn't restrained and we're just sitting in one place and we can get up and actually talk to people in the cabin, even though very often when you're in a plane, I know mid-flight you just go to the bathroom or whatever, but right, it's just cruising altitude. I just want us to be at that, and we seem to be in a culture that where we are incapable of giving people of giving each other grace, of giving each other just a little bit of birth to process things, and where everything that we say is immediately on the record and held against us in the court of public opinion. And yeah, like I was talking to my friend Josh about this, who's a big Tenacious D fan and has been for many years. And I remember Josh introduced me to Tenacious D back in, I think when their first album came out around 2002. Maybe it was their first album, I don't know. But that was the album that was huge. Everybody was listening to it, his big album. And, Josh was just telling me that, Jack Black is obviously just preserving his, career, his very family-oriented films and all that. And the whole thing will probably blow over in a little while. And I hope that's true. But it looks to me that for now, like, the band is broken up. And I think it's by not giving his friend and collaborator, again, of 40 years, just a little bit of grace and he, I think, blew it up way out of proportion. And I don't see them getting back together again without this thing hanging over their heads, right? So I don't know. It makes me sad. Like I'm not really I don't really care about Tenacious D that much. I don't really. I think they came out with an album recently, but I think that this kind of story makes me sad that, like, just these two guys who seem to know everything about each other and have seemed to be around for almost as long as I've been alive, that they're broken over just in a heartbeat over something that just happened. And not only that, but Kyle Gass said this in the middle of Jack Black surprising him with a cake, right? So the guy's on stage, maybe he's surprised. The assassination probably happened right before they went on stage, and he's just in the middle of trying to process this, and time has slowed down for him all of a sudden, and again, it's like that fifth of a second that we all found ourselves in. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. I did. And I'm willing to bet you probably did too if you don't want to see Trump be president in 2024. A fifth of a second, right? Where you were just like, oh, really? Okay. And if you want to stop listening to the show because you don't condone violence, believe me, I don't condone violence. I'm just saying that everybody for like a fifth of a second was probably like, oh, okay. And then they were like, oh, no, that's not good. That's not good. No, I don't want to live in a country where people are just shot down for being on stage saying stupid things. Hey. So I'm having a hard time keeping the cigar lit. It's like I said, a very windy day. The storm's coming in. So... yeah, but let's talk about something fun, like the movies. Let's talk about some movies for a second. This week, I went to the movies. It's been a while. I always have such a hard time thinking about the fact that there was a time in my life where I went to the movies almost every single week, and probably a couple of times a week. And it wasn't just because a lot of movies were coming out that I wanted to see. It was because I just loved going to the movies. My friends and I would go to the movies, and very common thing on a Friday night, just to go to the movies, and you're sitting there in a packed house of people, and yeah, after the movie's over, you stand out there with your friends, and you talk about it until the cops tell you to leave, and then you go to like a restaurant or something, and get like a late night dinner and drinks, and then you continue to talk about the movie. And, yeah, it's just a very romantic notion that I do miss from time to time. And, yeah, it's just something that I don't really do that much anymore because, I'm older now, and a lot of my friends that I want to go to the movies with, they have, jobs and kids and can't always get away on a Friday night to go to the movies. So, yeah, usually these days when I go and see a movie, I usually go by myself. I go in the middle of the afternoon. And I wasn't going to go this week. I kept on going back and forth about if I really wanted to go see this new movie, a Western movie called Horizon. It was written and directed and starring Kevin Costner, right? It's like, you remember Kevin Costner from like Dances with Wolves and Field of Dreams, just this real big actor in the 80s and 90s. Really big movie star when I was a kid. And then he made Waterworld and The Postman, these big epic fantasy movies that I think kind of tanked his career. But I think he's made a comeback in recent years because he's been on that hit show Yellowstone. A lot of people tell me about that show. I haven't seen it, but yeah, it's a big Western show. And but yeah, I think he dropped out of that show so that he could make a series of movies called Horizon. And I went and saw the other day Horizon Part 1. I think the full title is Horizon: An American Saga Part 1. I know. I don't know why I was so compelled to go see this movie in the movie theater, and I think one of the reasons being is because I am such a big evangelist of big screen movies, and I, like so many other people, get incredibly depressed when movies come out these days that are supposed to be big hit films in the movie theater, what they call blockbusters. And they just tank. They don't make nearly the amount of money that the studio, who put millions of dollars into getting it out there, thought it was going to do. And then the next week they just dump it on streaming, right? It completely goes against the grain of how movies used to be, which is where movie theaters would put out movies and they would release them big and give them a few weeks to build an audience before they pulled them out of the theater. And that model, I know, of course, was because the movie theater was the only place to see these movies. And when they pulled it out of the movie theater, they would then have to go about the very arduous process of dubbing tapes and marketing VHS and DVD releases, right? But now it's just the marketing campaign has become so consolidated that they don't have to do much at all, and it's also just a digital file, and so it doesn't really matter if they put it on in movie theaters or if they put them on streaming, right? And so, yeah, this has been a very depressing summer because, I saw that movie, Mad Max Furiosa, which was a beautiful movie. I saw it in the theater. It was so good. It was great, just a great theatrical experience. And it didn't make nearly the amount of money that the studio wanted it to make, so they just immediately dumped it on streaming. And they just don't, movies just aren't given the chance anymore to build up an audience, right? And so I did want to go ahead and see this Horizon movie. I'm not typically a major big Western fan. Like I love like Unforgiven and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in these movies, but I'm not typically a huge Western fan. I felt compelled to go and see this one because I don't know, for whatever reason, I always feel kind of bad for Kevin Costner because despite the fact that the guy's movies usually fail, I grew up with them failing so spectacularly that you just have to admire a guy who keeps making the same mistakes over and over again. But he clearly is so invested in what he does, and you just don't see you don't see celebrities like that anymore. His kind are very rapidly dying out. The only other one like Kevin Costner that I can really think of is Francis Ford Coppola. Francis Ford Coppola hasn't made a movie in years, and he, very much like Kevin Costner, is investing millions of dollars of his own money into making this movie Megalopolis. And yeah, I think like Kevin Costner and Francis Ford Coppola are getting this major backlash from the film industry because I think they're just not playing it by the rules. They're kind of turning their backs on the studios. They're putting their own money into making these movies, and they're releasing them how they want to release them. And for that reason, Horizon was getting all these very negative reviews from a lot of film critics. But I got the feeling as I was reading some of the reviews that none of these film critics were reviewing the movie. They were reviewing Kevin Costner. And they were reviewing, they were sort of treating it as a referendum on the Western genre, like saying like the Western genre is dead. It just celebrates colonialism and the quiet white male stereotype, and so, and then the people, and then there were a lot of, there was a faction of other film reviewers who seemed to really like the movie. So regardless of what it was, it looked like a movie that I wanted to see because I was just really curious to see it and make up my mind for myself on what it was like, right? So, and also, barring that, I knew that Horizon is not going to be in the theater this week. I knew that this was probably going to be my last time to see this movie in Birmingham, Alabama, a very small venue for movie theaters. It was because it had just made, the movie cost something like $100 million to make, and I think it made like $23 million the first week it was out. And every movie, the few movie theaters that in town that were playing it were only playing it at like one show a day. So I'm like, oh yeah, this movie's going to be on streaming next week. As a matter of fact, it already was on streaming. I looked it up, and it's like showtimes, and then next to that it had a big YouTube logo. I clicked on YouTube, and it's like you can rent it for $25. So it's like it's cheaper to go see it in the theater, and I wanted to see it in the theater, right? Because it was a big Western, a big ambitious movie by Kevin Costner, and I didn't know what it was going to be like. I didn't know what the quality of it was going to be, because just the people who loved it seemed to love it, and the people who didn't like it seemed to not like it for reasons that had nothing at all to do with the movie itself. They were just treating it as a referendum on the entire genre, which is not what movies should be. But anyway. So, yeah, I went and saw Horizon last Monday morning, or Monday afternoon. And as I predicted, I went into the theater, and it was completely empty. There was nobody else in there. You know how you go and you like, I bought the ticket at the box office, or I guess you don't even go to a box office now. You go to like the concession stand. So I guess they can sell you a bunch of goodies to go with your ticket. They do this like automatically now. They don't even just read the room, but a little display comes up on the computer in front of me, and he's like, pick your seat. And I just looked, and they were all open. I was like, does it matter? And he's like, no, not really. It's like, but I can't go forward to the next screen until you pick a seat. So I just picked like just a random seat in there. And it's like, okay. And he gave me a ticket. Yeah, I go in. It's just like for 3 hours, I had the entire room to myself. I sat in the very back in the middle, right? So I could see the full breadth of the screen, right? And, Horizon, An American Saga, Part 1. It's supposed to be the first part of 4 parts, I think. It was good. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. I actually agree with the general consensus. It's not a great movie. It's not a bad movie. Totally average movie with some really good moments in it, okay? So, like I said, it is a 3-hour-long movie. The first hour of the movie is absolutely brilliant. I was like on the edge of my seat. I never ever say that about a movie. I was literally watching the first hour of the movie thinking about like, God damn, Pioneer Life was awful, right? Few movies about the West manage to convince you and really get it across to you how truly miserable and dangerous it was. Being one of those people who came across the West, whether it be through Arizona or Utah or Colorado, during the 1850s and 60s. You were constantly under the threat of attacks by Native Americans who did not want you there, wild animals, just snakes, right? And obviously long stretches of land without any water at all, right? And so, yeah, the first hour of this movie has a very extended and very violent and very unsettling attack by Native Americans on this group of homesteaders who had just founded their home, and they're having like a big dance. And suddenly all these natives, Americans just descend on them and just dispatch them one by one. It's just so grisly. It's a horror movie. It really is. And the whole sequence is so well done and so thrilling and unsettling that I really haven't had that feeling watching a movie since, like, I don't know, Saving Private Ryan or something like that, where it's like you're just on edge for such an extended period of time, right? And yeah, so the movie is mostly about westward expansion. It's about different. It's very serialized. It's all over the place. It's kind of like, I don't know, Dazed and Confused meets Unforgiven or whatever, where it's just the stories of all these different people who are coming out west over the period of about 10 years, and just their different stories. So the opening hour of the movie is pretty much dedicated to one story. As I said, it's this group of homesteaders and the aftermath of what happens after they essentially get suckered into a land deal. These homesteaders, they buy the title to this land from a very shady businessman who doesn't tell them that it's Native American hunting grounds. And so if you're a white person and you settle there, then you're bound to be, destroyed, right? And so that's one of the things that the movie brings up that I've honestly never seen a Western address before, that the most valuable commodity in the West, as there always has been in America, is land. And just like in the 1850s and all these people moving out west to where white people had never lived before, it was given to a lot of bad speculation and bad investments. And so if you were a guy and you saw this wide open swath of land that had been surveyed and staked out, obviously you would attain the title to that land, but then very quickly thereafter find that the land was bad for whatever reason. And so the opening hour of the movie deals with the fallout of that kind of bad decision. So where it's like, it's just land that has not been deeded. There's no treaty for it. There's no peace treaty. It's just open hunting season, right? So, yeah. And then for the next 2 hours, there's a whole slew of other stories we get into. There's the story of this woman who steals a baby from this man who I believe had raped her, and then his sons go after her. There's that story. There's also a very good story about like just this long, like 3 mile long wagon train of homesteaders, and all the things that they have to deal with. And so, after the first hour is so good, the last 2 hours are full of, it gets very monotonous at times. It gets very tedious at times, very melodramatic. Again, if you know Kevin Costner, you know that he's kind of akin to the melodrama, right? But overall, I would say it's not altogether a bad movie. It's not a great movie. It's not a bad movie. I would say out of 4 stars, 3 stars. And I think that's pretty much the consensus of the internet, right? Now, the biggest problem the movie has is that, yes, it's the first part in a 4-part series, and I don't know that it warrants that much, right? I don't know if this story, and so much of the movie, of this first movie that I saw, is so much of the stories rely on the outcomes that are going to be resolved in the following movies, right? And so Kevin Costner was really gambling on this movie being a success and people wanting to know what the outcome of those stories are, right? Because every single story in the movie is not resolved in the slightest at the very end, okay? And so it's just, you have to see the other 3. I understand they've already shot part 2. They had plans to release it in August, but because this movie was not a theatrical success, it's going to go straight to streaming at some point this year. They don't know. And then the other 2 movies have not been shot yet. And so it remains unclear if Kevin Costner, like Francis Ford Coppola, is going to continue just selling off houses and getting second mortgages to pay for these movies. Who knows? But I would see part 2. I don't know. I'm excited about it. I would like them to resolve some of the stories, maybe even open up some new ones, right? I don't know. But it is, it's worth seeing. I don't know if you can still see it where you are, but yeah, if you enjoy westerns, if you enjoy seeing like big screen movies, go see this one definitely, without a doubt, right? Yeah. Yeah, but with that being said, though, I don't know if I have anything else to talk about right now. Unless there's anything on your mind, let me know over at mikesbonfire.substack.com. That's where I'm posting my show these days. You can also find me over at the Overnightscape Underground at onsug, onsug.com. And yeah, this show will be released, I guess, today, Sunday. It's just, again, it's a week of transition for me. Because, as I said, I'm in the middle of just revamping the Midnight Citizen studio and just doing some work on the computer to kind of clean out the hard drives. And I was just having this moment this past week. I was working on the latest episode of the Video Street Video Store, which, as you know, is a feature that appears every week over at the Substack, just an edited collage of videos that I like to put together and write about. And so that appears every Wednesday lately. And I didn't put one out this week because I was having such a hard time getting my computer to just like cooperate with me. It's like I would make one cut and the thing would just take forever to register to process things. And it's a good computer. It's like a powerful computer. I mean, relatively for what I need it for. But I've had it now, I guess, for 2 years, and I guess at that point, kind of computers start showing their age. I don't know. Right? So I'm really trying to do what I can because I can't afford a new computer right now. I'm trying to do what I can to get that computer back to like operating as a machine that I can edit audio and video on pretty easily. So and my friend Dave has been working on a new podcasting studio down at the studio that he does production work at, and this past week he got a computer in there and like a mixing board, and so it's coming together as a pretty functional podcasting studio that he says I can use anytime I want to. So I'm probably gonna, I hope he realizes what he did, because I'm probably gonna take advantage of that. Go and record some podcasts down there. So anyway, but thank you so much again for joining me. I'll see you next time. Keep your eyes open.